All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Nerve Guys podcast where we discuss movement from the lens of the brain. My name is James. I'm going to be taking you through this episode, and just like always, this episode is brought to you by the Neuroband. That is not a sponsor. That is my own vision and balance training tool. I'll talk more about that at the end. So today, we've got a question that wasn't specifically asked for the podcast, but came up probably about 6 times this week from different clients and conversations I've had, which is, what do you do when nothing has been working? And that's a pretty loaded question, because if nothing's working, technically you don't know what to do, because basically everything can still matter. One of the hardest things about trying to learn a skill, get out of pain, get stronger, whatever it is you can try everything and still not try it correctly. Somebody says, hey, meditation helps me with my anxiety. I tried meditation, it didn't work. Well, did you try the right kind of meditation? Did you actually try the right kind of meditation, but you didn't do it for long enough? Or did you need to do something else? So maybe you needed to get a massage, and then suddenly if you did the meditation after instead of before, it would have worked. The problem with the human brain and body is it's so complicated and has so many variables going on at once that pretty much any combination of different things could be the right combination, or they might just work on their own, or in other circumstances, the same thing that you already tried might actually work. It becomes really difficult to know what you should be looking at, especially as you go further and further down the rabbit hole and you try things again and again and again and nothing works. It becomes pretty frustrating to still be in that position of feeling like you're right at square one. So today we're going to talk about, well, what do you do in that situation then? What is it that gets you on the right track? What I would usually recommend to people is, if you are genuinely finding no change, first, I would say, are you genuinely finding no change? And if so, how do you know? And that question is basically designed to say, are you actually measuring this? Or is it just an assumption? Because one of the things that happens, especially if it's something negative, is when you have a bad day, everything feels like it sucks. It's very hard to relate one bad day with another bad day that happened in the past. It's very hard to figure out how many days have gone in between. And so usually I'll say, like, have you actually measured it? Because if you're having the same bad day, but it's a week longer that it took before you got there, actually there's some improvement. The same with skill learning. If you've hit a plateau, has the plateau lasted as long as all of your other plateaus? Because if not, there's a chance that actually if you just get to the end of how long it's supposed to take, you're going to see the progress again, and you didn't even need to do anything. So measuring things and actually coming up with some data to kind of prove to yourself that either nothing's working, or surprising yourself that things actually are changing and it's just at a slightly imperceptible rate, or in another way that makes it hard to discern, is really useful. That having said, both cases, you probably still want things to be going a little bit faster. So then we move to the next part of the strategy, which is, do you have any weaknesses that your body is so terrified of that it's actually hiding from you? So one of the reasons, if you go through every possible option and nothing works, I would say in probably about 3/4 of the people that I work with, so about 75%, I speak to those people and I see like a glaring hole of like, why aren't they working on this? This is so obvious. You know, you see the meme of the person saying like, I just keep getting these headaches, and they're like, they got like a big nail sticking through their forehead, and you're like, is it because of the nail? Is it not because of the nail? No, I'm just wondering why I get these headaches all the time. Same kind of thing applies. You have people saying, look, I keep trying everything, nothing is working, and you're just sitting there going like, I can see the problem. It's right there. Other times, maybe it's not so obvious, but you get a similar kind of feeling of like, there's got to be something that this person is just completely ignoring. Or maybe you feel like that yourself, where you're like, okay, I feel like I've tried everything, but there's just got to be something I'm missing. And just like a magic trick, the thing that's missing is usually missing because it's so simple that you just discount it as a possibility, rather than it's so complicated that you can't see it because it's outsmarted you. And then the next question is, well, how are we going to deal with that? How do you figure out the thing that's evaded you for so long by just making itself invisible to you? And the answer is not to look for the thing that you can't see, but look for the thing that's the loudest. So usually when I get people who are struggling with a problem for a very long period of time, the first thing that I want to ask them is about, what are your character strengths? Like, what things do you pride yourself on how good you are at them? It could be something like, I'm just really good independently. So, you know, I don't need to be relying on another team. I can get everything done myself, and that's what made me such a good business owner, because I didn't have to get approval from other people. I didn't struggle with ever making a decision. I can just decide what I want, go do it. I'm super independent. That's great. Other people, it's, oh, I'm very logical. You know, I'm really great at weighing up statistics and analyzing all the pros and cons of everything and coming to a logical conclusion of finding the exact right answer. Other people might be complete opposite, and it's like, oh, I'm very social, or I'm super creative. Anytime that you have like a character strength that, one, is objectively really high. So imagine like your video game character, and they've got, you know, all the little stats like speed, strength, courage, social skills, logic, creativity. If you see one stat that is maxed out, very often there's a pretty good reason for that. And the reason that you have maxed out that one statistic is that somewhere else in your life, there was something that your brain was absolutely terrified of, or absolutely trying to avoid, and this statistic or this character trait helped to like build an impenetrable wall around that thing. And that thing is going to be the invisible thing that you just can't find, which is why nothing is working. And like I said, this isn't every case. It's not even like 90% or anything. I would say it's more in like the 3/4 range. It happens more often than not when I work with people, but not all the time. So let's kind of just get an idea of how that works, what's going on, and how you can use it to sort of figure out what's going on. So let's take a muscle or a bone. You know, if you break your bone, and you reset it, the bone doesn't just grow back, it grows back stronger and bigger, and you end up with like a little lump or a notch in that area, because the body says, okay, well, if it can break there once, it can break there again. I'm going to strengthen it, and I'm going to make sure that, you know, with more damage, it's going to take extra force before that specific part of the bone breaks again. Same thing gets true with character. You know, if somebody humiliates you, then your brain tries to figure out, okay, I'm going to put extra effort into not being humiliated again. The way that it's going to do that, rather than where bone is just going to get harder and harder and harder, you might just get more and more angry and or more and more, not more and more, less and less self-conscious. So, you know, if you just become hard to humiliate, then you're not going to get humiliated again. That works up to a certain point. But if you find that this is something that you're going to have to deal with daily, so let's say that you're constantly taking a beating on your arm, then your body is going to figure out other strategies. It's going to, maybe if you hit the underside of your arm all the time, it's going to start rotating your posture so that now you're more likely to hit the front of your arm, which it hasn't taken as much damage and is maybe a bit stronger. Maybe the muscles all around that area are going to tense up and actually hold the bone better so that it's harder for it to break. Maybe even you're going to actually start to develop loads of compensations in completely other parts of the body that mean when something hits your arm, your hip automatically pulls and twists so that it can absorb the force a lot better. When your body is trying to avoid a negative thing happening, it usually builds up strength in other areas to make it stronger and stronger. And the same goes for your personality. So if you find that you're constantly let down by other people, whether they're bullying you, just ignoring you, neglecting you, you're probably going to find, especially if this has happened from a young age, you start learning to become independent. And you start to find that this independence gets rid of that negative thing that you don't like, and it builds and builds and builds, and you're able to live your life much more productively, much more effectively. You actually become kind of successful in whatever area that you're in. The problem with this is as you start gravitating towards that personality trait, you start maxing out all of its kind of features. So, all of the energy that goes into being independent, you're going to burn through those cylinders every single day. And eventually, there's going to be knock-on effects in the brain. So independence versus social skills. Big example there is that social skills, while you might not think about it, actually can go a long way to reducing the amount of pain and inflammation that you feel when you're injured. So somebody who's really, really independent and actually doesn't rely on other people, doesn't ask for help from other people, is going to starve certain parts of the brain that benefit from social interactions. And when they benefit from social interactions, they actually help to create like a analgesic effect. They kind of create natural painkillers that make pain not go away, but not seem as bad. And what you end up finding is that, when you've developed this independent skill, your life goes great until it hits a hurdle. And it's probably not going to be your weak link that, you're neglected or ignored by other people because you already fixed that. But something that exists on a satellite, like you're in pain and the social structures of your brain actually are supposed to help you reduce the pain, then you might actually find now you're in a rut because the thing that you need to solve, or the weak link that you need to fix, your brain has completely discounted, because it's like, there's no way that can be the problem because I already fixed it with this giant suit of independent armor that I've built up. Not sure if I explained that well. You can let me know in the comments whether that was a good analogy, but doesn't have to be independence. Basically, every single strong character trait that you build is almost always in response to being weak somewhere else. Just the same as every single strong muscle you have, a lot of the time is in response to weakness or instability somewhere else. If you want to find a quick way to start finding out solutions to your movement problems and your pain problems, ask myself, what is the strong skill or the character trait that I am most proud of in myself? Flip it on its head and say, how would I do the opposite? And you're probably going to find your brain is going to give you every excuse not to do that. So, if you're really logical and you like to have the right answer for everything, flip it on its head and say, I'm just going to pick something at random. I'm going to flip a coin, and whatever it says to do, I'm just going to do that. If you're really social, you have old people around you all the time, then actually maybe you need to do the opposite of the independent guy, and maybe you actually need to go and learn to spend time on your own. And you see that the results are that your brain gets more like rest and regeneration time that you weren't getting when people were around you. Any kind of strong character trait that you can identify when you flip it around, and especially if it feels uncomfortable to do that, if you think the thought is, nah, I don't want to do it, I don't want to go through with that, then that is probably the right one for you. Turn it on its head, work on it, then go back and start trying your different, movement therapies and all those things. You would be surprised the amount of times that you now start to see changes where changes did not happen before. I'll give my example. The reason I say independence a lot is that was me down to a T. I was very much in my social life, in my working career. I was always a person like, I don't need anyone else to do it. I'll do everything myself. I did all the lifting of gym equipment and stuff. Usually I was working with really small kids, and trying to get them to coordinate each other would take so long that I was like, look, I'm going to lift it. I'm going to do it. And over a while in my gymnastics career, my knees just started to just become horrifically tight, painful. It became really hard to move anything, and that lasted for quite a while. One of the big changes that happened, I was doing the same kind of rehab and same therapy for a long time, never really changed it. The moment when things started to change was the moment when I started to become less like one-track mind about my career and job, and started to become more about like building a social circle and that kind of thing. And when I started to include other people and ask for help with things, actually I was doing the same knee rehab, but it started to work a lot quicker. So for myself, actually, that was one that really helped. I would say nowadays, I'm going to need to look at other things. So, there's other aspects of me where I could probably do with being more vulnerable, and I will find that when I get to another problem that just doesn't seem fixable or doesn't seem to go away, again, look at what am I strongest at right now? Let's flip it over and try it again and see where I get. So that's kind of my thoughts on that for today. Hope it was interesting. If you want help with that kind of thing, follow my Instagram, rewire_ND. You can send me some messages. We can chat and see if there's any work that we can do. If you would like to support this podcast as well, I would highly recommend you check out the Neuroband. There is a link in the description below. It is vision and balance training. So maybe that's your weak link. Probably not. But if you find that actually, your vision and balance is awful, use this as a stimulus to go get that sorted out and see if your body thanks you for it after. If not, still kind of a cool journey. If you haven't got started with like vision and balance training, there is a lot of it starting to integrate its way into sports and movement and training. Don't fall behind the curve. This is probably the cheapest way that you will get yourself into learning how it all works. So check it out. There's a link in the description. Otherwise, thank you for watching. I will see you next week.